Good morning. I'm Amber Scott, your Director of Religious Exploration, and my pronouns are she, they. On behalf of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Columbus, welcome to this Sunday's service, and congratulations for making it through the snow. We acknowledge that this land, the hills, the woods and rivers, is the land of the Adena, Hopewell, Wyandotte, Miami, Seneca, Erie, and Cayuga people. We acknowledge the injustice of the theft of this land and the continuing presence, despite attempts at the annihilation of indigenous peoples of this place. We pledge ourselves to repair and justice, both with this land and its people. Please rise in body or spirit to sing our opening hymn, number 1028, Fire of Commitment. The words will appear on the screen, and you can also find them in your teal hymnal.
Thank you. Singing, everyone. I'm a board member here at First UU. My name is Cindy Wicker. My pronouns are she, her. And I'd like to say good morning and welcome. Thanks for making it through the snow. And thank you everybody online for attending as well. We are so glad that you are here. Our congregation aspires to be welcoming to all, and we want you to know that you belong. However, many of you have entered our doors or tuned in to our YouTube channel. We are so glad that you are here, and we welcome you. If this is your first time visiting with us, be sure to stop at the greeter stand out in the hall to receive your first-time visitor gift, if you have not already received it. Please let us know that you're here today by scanning the QR code on your order of service or on the screen up there. You will also find a digital order of service, our Joys and Sorrows form, and our donation page at this link. Please join the Clintonville Arts Guild today after the service to enjoy the newest art exhibit by members of our larger community. 30 artists have 46 pieces on exhibit in the First UU Gallery and Worship Center, now through the end of February. Come and meet the artists after the service at 12:30 today, January 22nd. There will be art, snacks, and conversations. Inquiries and purchase information is available from Deb Bellew. Also, there are auction items still available. Please visit the auction website or check out Friday News for more information. We would now like to invite any children who want to help bring in the light to meet Gus out in the hall. So turn around, Gus is back there, waving. Everyone else, please join me in centering ourselves as we listen to this morning's prelude.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Kathleen Fowler, and I have the privilege of serving as your Minister of Pastoral Care, and my pronouns are she and her. And it is now time for our children to bring in the light. Our chalice lighting words this morning are from our gray hymnal, number 473. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Thank you, Roshan, for your help lighting our chalice this morning. Please remember to send your children to class with coats, hats, gloves, and other items they may need if they decide to explore the snow later today. To volunteer or learn more about our family programs, you can email me at amber@firstuucolumbus.org. Today's story is called Mama, Where Are You From? Written by Marie Bradby and illustrated by Chris Saint-Pierre. Mama, where are you from? Where are you from, Mama? I'm from Monday mornings, washing loads of clothes in the wringer washer and peach baskets full of laundry to hang on the clothesline, strung from tree to tree, the sun bleaching the sheets, the wind whipping them dry. I am from beans, green, lima, and peas, picked, strung, snapped, shelled into pans, put on the stove to simmer for an hour. I am from peddlers driving a creaky old wagon with a big old horse and calling up and down the street, "Fishman, fishman, I've got fresh trout, spots, and croakers today. Fishman, fishman." "When did you get them?" my mother would ask. "They're real fresh. They came in the dock early this morning." "All right," she'd say, "I'll take some croakers." Calling, "Ragman, ragman, got any rags to sell? 10 cents a pound." My mother would give him a bundle of worn-out clothes and stash the money in the cookie jar. Calling, "Iceman, iceman." If it was real hot, we would get 2 blocks of ice. Mama would crack it with a pick and give me the chips to suck on. "Mama, where is that place? Where is that place, Mama?" It's where the edge of town met the countryside, where the city sidewalk ended and chickens ran through yards, where families grew into a neighborhood as close as a knit sweater, where we threw up a hand to everyone we saw, where I saw Miss Mary passing our house in the morning on her way to work, and Mr. Thompson coming home from baking bread all night. It's where the school bus took my older brothers and sisters way across town, past school, after school, after school, until it came to a school where all the children were brown, some light, some dark, some in between. Where days took their time and morning lay on the rolling hills as long as she pleased. Where I played under a gumball tree that took up the whole sky and wondered why Miss Mary cleaned someone else's house, why the sidewalk ended at the edge of my neighborhood, and why my brother and sister didn't go to the school right up the street. Where afternoons, my brothers delivered newspapers and I sprinkled and rolled up clothes, while my sister pressed with 2 flat irons, one to use and the other to heat up on the stove to be ready when the first went cold. Where everything we wore and used was starched and ironed, even dish towels and underwear. Where Friday evenings we fried fish outdoors and my cousins would come over with cherry pie and ice cream. We would sit around tubs of iced sodas in the backyard, and Daddy would say to Cousin Albert, "What'll you have?" Where we children played 1, 2, 3, red light, while the adults listened to ball games on the radio, the Washington Senators and the Baltimore Orioles. Where Daddy played his old Duke Ellington and Count Basie records, and we danced in the shadows, switching our hips, popping our fingers, and pretending to be adults. "Mama, can I go there? Can I go there, Mama?" Yes, we can travel through roads in my memory. Let's see. Up the stairs, sliding down the hall, passing beds full of children, heads full of new dreams, nights full of stars. Yes, I am that morning washing, bean snapping, wagon washing watching, tree swinging, Miss Mary waving, brown bus riding, clothes sprinkling, croaker eating, red light playing, finger popping, star dreaming girl. That's where I'm from. The end. Today, as we consider our path forward, let us also remember where we are coming from. Our history as a congregation and as Unitarian Universalists can inform our dreams for the future. I now invite the congregation to form a sheltering arc of love as we sing our young people back to their families and out to class.
So, oh, is Michaela coming? Okay. Good morning. I am Reverend Kelly McNeil, and it is my honor to serve this congregation as your minister of congregational life. Our centering words this morning come from Sean Neil Barron, entitled A History of Church, Including Yours. One day, your church was born. Maybe it was a gathering of saints called together for the common worship of a wrathful God, ceaselessly praying between bouts of decrying the evils of Christmas or dancing. Or maybe a few brave souls answered a notice in the newspaper, curiosity piqued by the announcement of a religion where free thinking and tolerance were bedrocks. No matter how it happened, your church was born. A gathering of people humble, caring, anxious, and quirky all at the same time, who covenanted to be with one another on the journey of life, death, and everything in between. And so it began. A faithful few, beautifully imperfect, called to that central task, that human task of connecting, loving, and serving. It was just a baby, and yet it was thrust deep into the human condition, tasked to hold minds and souls, bodies and hearts along the roller derby of disease and birth, infighting and joy, and Christmas pageants. Sometimes all of those at the same time. They gathered to hear the world broken open for insightful sermons, rejuvenating music, and a community whose fierce devotion to each other's well-being rivaled a mama bear's for her cubs. But it wasn't always like that, of course. There were trying times. When the church almost split in half over the war or integration, or when the mill left the town vacant, or when the minister crossed that line and the people couldn't speak about it for decades. But somehow, you are still here, still on the town common, still the church that everyone recognizes, still the ones that show up every time you are called on. New people came and they changed things. Small things, big things, things that nobody noticed as it happened until suddenly it was hard to even recognize anything anymore. That was a hard moment, a tearful moment. And other things changed too. The proclamations about God, once heard loud from the pulpit, softened. Wrathful became loving. Distant became intimate. Mandatory became optional. After the war, the nursery and RE classrooms were overflowing. Each baby dedicated reminded the church of the incredible beauty of life and this gift of community, all huddled around baby, would bestow upon this child. The history of your church is more a story of the determination of love to break forth than it is about tie-dye or chalices, sermon discussions, or social justice committee meetings. The history of the church is the history of human enterprise, evolving in its sights and sounds, yet revolving always around its core. The history of your church is the gift of potential and momentum, of baggage and personality. The history of your church is the launch pad from which you spring into action or disarray. Each day, your church is born. Please join me as we sing our next hymn. You may remain seated for this one. Be ours a religion. One day, a woman was making dinner for her family, and her daughter, watching as the mother cut off the ends of the roast beef before putting it into a pan, looked confused. She asked her mother why she cut off the ends of the roast beef instead of sticking the whole thing in the pan, and her mother responded that she didn't know. It's just how her mother taught her to make it. Not happy with that answer, the daughter called her grandmother and asked the same question. Why do you cut the ends off of the roast before putting it into the pan? Her grandmother responded, I don't know. That's how my mother taught me to make it. Still unhappy with the answer she was receiving, the young girl called her great-grandmother and asked her the same question. Her great-grandmother chuckled and said that when she had her first home, the oven was too small to fit a whole roast, so she had to trim off the edges so it would fit. Now, you may have heard this legend before. It's usually used as a cautionary tale that maybe we might be doing things unnecessarily, simply because it's the way things have always been done. The daughter in this story asked a relatively simple question, why? And when the response was a variation of, because we've always done it that way, she didn't accept that as the final answer. She kept asking until she found out what was at the core of this strange family tradition. Now, I know that one interpretation of this legend could be that it paints the mother and grandmother as individuals who do without thinking, mindlessly going about their dinner preparations without question. But I see it differently. If I were to put myself in this story, even after learning the answer to the question, why, I might still occasionally cut the ends off of the roast as I made it. Not because it serves a purpose for taste or because my pan isn't large enough, but because I would feel a connection to my ancestors and have a moment of levity and joy as I made my family dinner. I would think about the love that went into teaching generation after generation how to create this meal and look forward with excitement for the opportunity to not only teach my children how to make this meal, but getting to share the story of why with them. In all of our lives, we have those things that we do almost on autopilot, not really needing to think too deeply about why we do something a particular way or why different things feel more important to us than they might feel to someone else. But if we pause to ask ourselves why, we might learn something about ourselves or our history that we didn't know before. At the end of the day, we may still do things the same way, but we have a more solid answer as to why we do it that way instead of another way. In our new member classes, we begin by briefly sharing our spiritual journeys. What brought us to this point at this time? Essentially, we share our why. Why First UU? Why Unitarian Universalism? This inevitably takes us into a conversation about our principles and sources. For many of us, when asked, what is Unitarian Universalism, or why are you a Unitarian Universalist, or any other variation of why, we point to these principles, identifying them as core to our faith tradition. But I wonder how many of us have stopped to think, why? If we designate the principles as being core to our faith or this tradition, why do we do that? Now, I'll admit that it wasn't until recently that I started asking myself those questions. Before learning about the work being done to revise these principles, I think I kind of took them for granted without giving it too much thought. I know that I like them, that they are values I want to influence and direct my life, but I never stopped to wonder where they come from, why they exist in the first place, why they feel so important and powerful to me. You might be surprised to learn that our principles aren't actually that old in relation to our long history as Unitarians Universalists, and Unitarian Universalists. Like all things, our faith has evolved over time. Now, I'm going to be getting into a little bit of history, so there's an insert in your order of service to follow along with dates if you are, like me, needing to follow along in that way. And I know our tech is putting that in the chat box for our people online. Both the Unitarians and Universalists were Christian traditions responding to what they felt to be inaccurate understandings and teachings from the Bible. At the time, they were viewed as radical, sacrilegious, essentially problematic. Our roots go back centuries to England, Poland, and Transylvania. Our ancestors were persecuted for their beliefs, some even burned at the stake for what they believed. And some Unitarians around the world are still, to this day, persecuted. In America, the Universalists officially organized in 1793. These radicals fought the idea of damnation, that God would punish God's creation in an eternal hell. From their reading of the Bible, Jesus came and died for everyone's sins, assuring universal salvation. They also believed that God was good, and that no good God could possibly create humans to then turn around and condemn them. Unitarians officially organized in America in 1825. These Unitarian radicals could not agree with the idea of the Trinity, the belief in Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. They couldn't find evidence of this in the Bible. So while Christians believed in the triune nature of God, Unitarians believed in the unity of God. Now, I will say this is a vast oversimplification. Like modern Unitarian Universalists, our ancestors were a free-thinking people, and their beliefs and ideas evolved and changed. There was not a singular understanding of what it meant to be a Unitarian or a Universalist. So by the time that the two parties, Unitarians and Universalists, came together to consolidate into one organization, the range of beliefs and ideas was a beautiful bouquet of unique and diverse trains of thought and experiences. I'm sure you can imagine that creating the principles in 1960 and 61 with this vast bouquet of ideas was not an easy task. In fact, the contentious nature of these discussions almost derailed the consolidation altogether. Almost 20 years later, conversations began happening around the nature of these principles. In particular, UU women and allies grew unhappy with the blatantly sexist language of the original bylaws. At the 1977 General Assembly, the UU Women's Federation put forward a Women and Religion resolution. And in this resolution, that ended up passing unanimously, the call was made for leaders to, quote, make every effort to put traditional assumptions and language in perspective and avoid sexist assumptions and language in the future. In 1981, 20 years after the adoption of the original principles, a revision that had been drafted by various women's groups was presented at General Assembly, our yearly national gathering of Unitarian Universalists to do the business of the association. Because of pushback and disagreement and heated arguments, a proposal was made for a committee to be set up to study the issue and report back. This committee went to work sending out questionnaires and holding meetings, trying to get a feel for what Unitarian Universalists around the country wanted. It was in these discussions that the idea of creating a list of our principles and a separate list of our sources would be a powerful way of helping UUs of various beliefs feel seen and heard. In 1983, the draft of the new proposed principles was sent out to congregations, and it was debated at that year's General Assembly. A final draft with changes based on the previous year's debates was presented in 1984 and was adopted. In 1985, it came forward for a second vote, as is required in the bylaws, and was passed with only one dissenting vote. I'm so inspired by the way that this process played out. An identity group of UUs came forward to state that they did not feel represented, that the sexist language in our governing documents left them feeling like they were on the outside looking in. It took years of conversations and compromise, debate and arguments, but our faith tradition listened to these women and worked to fix the language to help all feel included and valued. They asked why. Why do the principles as they were written at that time leave a group of UUs feeling unrepresented and left out? Why do the principles exist in the first place? The original 6 principles, understood at that time as the representation of our faith, were deemed good, valuable, and important, but ultimately lacking in their purpose: to say to the world that our faith tradition is inclusive and welcoming of all. In an article in 2000, in the UU World magazine, the Reverend Walter Jones Jr., chair of the committee who worked on these new principles, made it clear that these 1985 principles and purposes were not a statement for the ages. In fact, the 4th principle, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, Jones states, carries the seeds of its own obsolescence. The author of this article, written in 2000, concludes by saying, quote, "In 2020, our current principles and purposes may also be perceived to have inadequacies that demand radical rewriting, and therein lies our genius. It's a process that is rightly called renewal, regeneration, and that is what has not changed, and let us hope will remain unchanged 20 or even 100 years from now." So here we are, 22 years after this article was written, finding ourselves in a very similar position to those UUs who were given the opportunity to reflect on, examine, analyze, and ultimately adapt the original principles. Since 2009, discussions and studies have been done on our current principles. There have been studies looking into whether or not UU gatherings were truly holding up our 5th principle, the use of democratic process. The 7th principle, the interdependent web of all existence, has been the subject of discussions around amendments. There have been questions around addressing non-human life in our 1st principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And a proposed 8th principle addressing racism has been discussed and debated in UU congregations across the country, leading many congregations to adopt it for themselves. And just like in 1977, a population of UUs have identified that they do not feel included in the principles and purposes as currently written. People of color have been asking for a long time and continue to ask to this day if Unitarian Universalism is actually a space for them. Following the path established in the 80s, a commission was formed to ask UUs around the country what they want, what they need, how they feel heard and seen. This commission has spoken with over 4,600 participants, received survey responses from almost 11,000 people, and their videos explaining the process and their findings have been viewed almost 8,000 times. And this year, at General Assembly, a new draft Principles and Purposes will be presented for debate. I'm expecting it to be no less of a debate than was seen in 1960 and 1983. After all, we are UUs. We love to debate. I know that hearing that something as beloved as our 7 principles may be changing may feel like a shock, and you may be feeling some immediate thoughts of wanting to push back and fight this change. I'll admit that I felt that way when I saw the new draft language. My immediate reaction was, oh, heck no. It felt like I was being told that there was something wrong with me. Reading the changes felt strangely personal. But I had to remind myself to find my why. Why are the principles so important to me? What is at the heart of that? It's because I so completely relate to the values and ideas that they hold. Does that go away if the language is a little different and the layout is changed? Is the proposed language fundamentally changing what I believe? Or is it naming it in a way that is more inclusive, approachable, and easier to identify with? What does our history show us about our principles, about how they've grown and evolved over the years? It took me a while and a lot of soul searching, but I came to the conclusion that I support these changes. I trust the process that was done to draft something new. I appreciate the complete transparency that has occurred through this years-long process. I appreciate that what is being done now is not new. It isn't some rogue, tiny group of people who are trying to take my Unitarian Universalism away. This process has been done before. We've listened when a group of people say, but where do I fit in? Where do I belong? But at the end of the day, I cannot speak for you. I can't give you an answer to your why. We each have to make those decisions for ourselves. What I can do is provide space for conversation. We can travel through this potential change together so that when we send delegates from our congregation to go vote on these changes, we know what our congregation wants. If you're feeling like you want to know more, or you're just really confused by all of this, we have copies of the Commission's report in the welcome hall after the service that you can pick up. I'll also include a link to this in our Friday news, and stay tuned for opportunities for us to gather and have a more thorough conversation about these changes. It's okay and completely natural to want to say, whoa, 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 wait a second. I'm really struggling with this. And it's also okay if you're sitting there thinking, meh, okay. I know that this may be the first time that you're hearing about a potential change, and if you're like me, you may need a good month to fully wrap your head around your why. But that's what we're here for. Let's explore that why, both our personal whys and our collective why, together. To start that process, let's call on our ancestors. The words to this next hymn were written in 1933 for the first joint hymnal between the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America. It was written as a celebration of how the two denominations were growing closer together. 28 years later, when the two denominations finally combined, creating the Unitarian Universalist Association, this hymn was sung by those gathered after they voted to consolidate. So please remain seated as we all sing together with all of those who came before us. Number 145 in your gray hymnal, As Tranquil Streams.
Our January Share the Plate recipient is Pathway Clubhouse. Pathway Clubhouse provides a friendly communal space for adults living with mental illness in Franklin County to participate in the development of social relationships, employment and education opportunities, and community involvement. Using the Clubhouse model, their psychosocial rehabilitation program hopes to empower its members through participation in new experiences while engaging with fellow members around the clubhouse. Please use the QR code on the screen, text the number on the screen, or go to our website, firstuucolumbus.org, and click the Donate tab to share as you feel called and are able. Our offering will now be gratefully received. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you, Nathan. That was hard to sit still for. In reflecting on Reverend Kelly's reading of the lines, "A history of your church is more about the determination of love to break forth," I ask, what is that thread that we must hold on to make this congregation better? For your consideration, I present to you William Stafford's poem, "The Way It Is." There is a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding, but don't ever let go of that thread. This morning, we lift up a gentleman in Geraldine, Alabama. The adage that charity begins at home has been enacted in the most uplifting way by the actions of one man. Hody Childress spent his whole life in Geraldine, working as a farmer and an employee of the Lockheed Martin Space Facility nearby. His family described him as a humble, God-loving man who would often send handwritten get-well cards and share vegetables from his garden with neighbors. But even his family didn't know one big secret. Every month for nearly a decade, Mr. Childress donated $100 to the local pharmacy for anyone who could not afford to pay for a prescription. Over the years, he gave nearly $12,000 to the community, but his generosity came with one condition: don't tell anyone. Then his approaching death changed the request. Now, in a spreading of his compassion, many others from across the country are calling the pharmacy, wanting to keep the fund going. We also lift up this morning the challenges concerning the leaks of draft opinions on the overturning of the constitutional right for abortion by the Supreme Court. Staff members received vigorous scrutiny in an effort to find the source of the leak, while the 9 most powerful people at the court were not being questioned nearly as sharply. The report, headed by the court's chief security officer, faulted the court for maintaining systems based on trust with few safeguards to limit access to sensitive information. The investigation was an attempt by Chief Justice John G. Roberts to stabilize the court and its image after a grievous breach and decline in public trust. Instead, it may have lowered confidence inside and outside the court. In interviews, court employees raised questions about whether the justices themselves had contributed to this decline. May the world hold more individuals who cannot let go of the thread of love. And now I invite Dana Reynolds and Sylvia Howe to come forward and to read our joys and sorrows that have been submitted this week and this morning.
Good morning. I'm Sylvia Howe. My pronouns are she, her. There are 2 caring cards this morning. One is a caring sympathy is sent to to Cynthia and Roger H. Cynthia's dearest aunt, Jean, died in their home on Wednesday morning after a very brief battle with cancer. In fact, Cynthia brought her here last fall, and she was looking forward to coming here. Healing thoughts are sent to Ross T. Ross is home recovering from knee replacement surgery last Thursday. His surgery went well, and so far, he doesn't have any pain. His balance and mobility are good. And those will be at the caring table for us to sign. There is one announcement. Tom P. wishes to express joy for Damon Hamlin that he is currently out of the hospital and recuperating at home.
Damar Hamlin.
It's what?
Damar Hamlin.
It's Damar?
Yeah.
Oh, it says in this one, Damon. Thank you, Dana. He's the football player, if you might not remember. This morning, 3 caring thoughts came in. One from Kelly P. for another person. It's the son, I assume it's their son. Nico has accepted a postdoctoral position at the University of Oxford in England. Wow. Congratulations on that one. Tom B. sent one in this morning. Many thanks to all who volunteer to make breakfast and brew coffee for the rest of us. Yes. And the last one came from Myra H. For the first UU youth group, thank you for shoveling the snow this morning. Yay! In case you're wondering, we have a terrific youth group, and if you see them in the halls afterwards, please thank them. Please visit the caring table in Beach Hall after the service to sign the cards this morning and to say hello to our volunteers. May we hold these joys and sorrows and all those yet unspoken gently in our hearts.
I invite you now to please rise as you are willing and able to sing Draw the Circle Wide. This isn't in either of your hymn books, but the words will appear on the screen.
Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide.
Please remain standing, and if you're comfortable, we can come together and hold hands as we extinguish our chalice this morning. I invite you to join me in saying the words that will appear on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of vision. As we go forth, let us heal and transform ourselves and our world through reason and love.
dance